Saddle up your horses.
What's up, brother? It is a special episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast, and we are certainly excited to do the schedule release episode right here on the Manely Broncos Podcast. Did I throw you off just there?
You didn't do the intro. I was shocked. That's literally the first time I've ever heard you not do the intro.
Yeah, no, I wanted to do something different, and go the sketch route and roll with the what's up, brother. But no, it's
I don't know how to reply now. I'm reading.
But it's exciting. The schedule is out. We will get a chance to do a game by game breakdown of the schedule. We'll also talk, of course, the preseason games that got announced, and maybe if we have enough time, we'll at least give a rough draft prediction, if you will, as far as like maybe what we feel like the win-loss total could be for the season. And for anybody that is in the chat, by the way, which you guys can comment through X, through Twitter. You can also comment through YouTube, and you can also comment through both Facebook pages of the Manely Broncos Podcast Facebook page, and as well as the MHRT Network Facebook page. And if you are on the YouTube channel, or you are yet to see this through the YouTube channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button on the MHRT Network page, and also follow the Manely Broncos on Twitter at Manely Broncos, and of course Brandon and I on social media at Cameron Parker PO, at Brandon Miller PO. So one thing is for sure, Brandon, a lot certainly was made about what role does F1 driver Lewis Hamilton have in terms of the ownership group. Well, we can safely say now that he is responsible for the schedule release video, or being a big part of the schedule release video.
No, man, he just eats food. That's all he does. He just eats food. No, I mean, it was cool to see like a Lewis Hamilton collab. I thought it was kind of cool. I mean, looking back at like, you compare it to the Chargers release video, which like is just kind of a bad idea in general, to be honest. But you compare anything to that release video, and it's probably going to be not as good. But I don't know. I think it's a bit overplayed. Like, yes, it's funny to see the release videos, and yeah, some teams make them awesome and hilarious, but I think the way that they set it up was pretty funny, especially since like obviously Lewis Hamilton is so the one thing that surprised me about like specifically him doing it is like obviously he's like British, so the kind of cultural difference is there. Him trying grits for the first time, I'm assuming the first time. I don't know if he's had grits before, but that was hilarious. I mean, like I kind of get why they would go after it or go about it that way. But the thing that kind of surprised me is like, I'm pretty sure he's vegan, isn't he?
I don't know.
So like almost all the food that he ate was not vegan.
Yeah. So I kind of like how certainly they went about it. I think it was I will say this, it was a very like, here's how I would have done it. If let's say, well, let's keep the Lewis Hamilton cameo, right? I would have had, well, you can't really do it like an actual footage. Maybe they like make it as an animation of Lewis Hamilton, but I would have it as like Lewis Hamilton, like in a race, and the race is like basically the people he's racing against, or the cars that he passes in order, would be like our opponents. Like that would have been cool if you're trying to keep it with like Lewis Hamilton, but I don't know. I mean, I thought it was I got it. I get why they did it that way. I thought it was okay. I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, it wasn't the most entertaining, but if you just look at it as like, if you don't look at it as like a release video, but you look at it as like Lewis Hamilton attempting to I'm reading Big Mike's comment, attempting to like eat food he's probably never had before from another culture, and like giving his opinion on it, and
just like the hilarity that ensues about like him not liking peach cobbler, and the whole thing with like, this is Southern food, like what the hell is this shit? I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. I mean, again, you compare it to the Chargers, like,
yeah,
everything's gonna look bad against the Chargers, but I thought it was okay.
I think maybe the more it actually happens, and you know me, I'm a big save clips kind of person, you know. And the one thing I will definitely say is in this Lewis Hamilton schedule release, I have my fair share. I have my fair share of clips that more than not will actually be frequently used, probably during the season and throughout the season. I will say, I think this opens the possibility up for more schedule release videos in the future for this. Like, I will say one thing that I think would be interesting in how they would do this, and I will say I thought they were going to go that route with Lewis Hamilton as he was eating food. I thought there was going to be like a Hot Ones release video.
That's exactly what I thought when I first saw it, and it was like him eating something. I thought it was a Hot Ones, and I was like, "Damn, that would have been this is going to be so good."
So maybe it's like a build
that's
up,
what I thought.
possibly.
Well, no, you already did the Lewis Hamilton eating food. You got to do something different this time.
Yeah.
But can we just? I know they're an opponent, but before we dive, because we're going to talk about it, like as soon as we get into the schedule and get into other stuff, like it's going to be hard to come back. Can we just talk about the Chargers video for a second? As long as we're talking about videos.
Let's talk about the Chargers video first, and then
every time I watch it, I see something new that's just even funnier.
What I was going to say, and we'll talk about some of the other ones that were fantastic, or outdone, or maybe a retread, if you will. Well, so yeah, I thought it was incredible. The fact that their creative mind. Their creative mind is just something else, man. The fact that they went with a Sims, like a simulation, if you will, it's so clever. And with current events and like Butker in the kitchen, and
it must have taken them so long to make that. Like designing, like creating all the characters, setting up the situation, like having to probably get the expansion pack to be in that situation. Like,
yeah,
hats off. I don't know, whatever they're paying the people that make these, like, triple it. I don't know. It's not even just everything is insane.
And even so much, even with the Chiefs, the second time they played the Chiefs, or maybe the first time, they had Chiefaholic in the courtroom.
Chiefaholic in the courtroom. Right. The one that really stood out to me, a couple of them stood out to me. Like, so the first Chiefs, like game, they basically had, like they were recording New Heights, like the Kelsey brothers, and then Taylor Swift shows up and like Travis Kelce just bails, which was funny. But no, the one that like made me do a double take, and every time I watched it, I saw something that I hadn't really noticed before, was the one for Atlanta, where I'm actually trying to pull that up here. Well, actually, there's a few of them that are absolutely hilarious, but specifically the one for the Falcons, where it's like an Atlanta nightclub, and like people waiting in line to get in. I was like, oh, okay, it's just like showcasing the city of Atlanta. And the more I kind of went back and watched it, there was like some kind of like it was like a super popular Atlanta Vine was like playing on the TV in the background. Kirk Cousins with the no shirt on and a chain was the DJ. And then it took me a couple of like rewatches to notice it. But when that, I basically didn't like see who it was, or I didn't see like what the jersey said, but I just saw like some dude walked in to the nightclub, and then like Kirk Cousins like freaked out and like dropped his
Penix
headset. I didn't realize at first, was like, oh shit, that's Michael Penix. Like that's hilarious. They had Baker Mayfield like cooking and then like dancing when he set the whole kitchen on fire.
Check out the Jag ones.
The one against us, I don't want to talk about. The Patriots, though, oh my god, the Patriots is the best one. It was like obviously the second to last part of the video, but basically it was like the Foxborough retirement home, and they had like all of the old dynasty Patriots in there, like obviously Tom Brady and Julian Edelman, like people that are no longer there. And then it pops up with the like death message that says your dynasty has ended, but the town lives on. There's no reason to let this house stay empty. Would you like to restart? Oh my God.
Yeah. And as far as some of the other ones, I gotta say, as funny as it was a retread. The Titans went ahead and did the exact same thing as last year. So it was funny, but it was one that just was a retread from last year. So I hate to display spoiler alert for you there, Brandon, but it was a retread from the one last.
What was it? Okay, speaking of the Titans real quick, I have to ask this question. The Titans part of the Chargers video, I did not understand. What was that? Did you get what that was?
No, I did not.
Okay. I still don't know what it is. But no, I have not seen the Titans video yet.
And then as far as some of the other ones that I thought were pretty good, if not, as far as maybe the worst one, let's just start with the worst one. My personal opinion, I thought the Indianapolis Colts one, look, for anybody that had the opportunity to actually watch the Broncos one and actually felt like it may be the worst one, go watch the Indianapolis Colts one. Because that one actually might be worse than the Broncos one. That is, they actually clicked send on that one. That was a really bad release video. And as far as some of the ones that I also enjoyed, maybe one that's not necessarily going to be talked about, I liked the Bears and kind of like a high school vibe. Annie Agar was in there for the Packers section. It was a very high school vibe. So of course, the Chicago Bears are going with a much more younger team, and so it was a high school atmosphere. It was kind of clever. But obviously, me being a video game nerd, I know you're a big video game nerd, or just a nerd in general like me. The Jags, I saw D-Rock mention the Jags. It was a X-Men 97.
I'm watching it right now.
It is really good. And then the Atlanta Falcons. I thought
that was like NFL Street.
NFL Street.
Oh my God, that brings me back. I would play that.
Yeah, that one was pretty incredible. And actually, I didn't get a chance to finish this one, but the Seahawks went out and went with a superpower theme, like having superpowers and stuff like that. But
the Jets part of this Jaguars video, did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Where's Aaron Rodgers like as the villain, and he's just holding a file that says "My own research." Oh yeah, that's good. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. So enough talking. Which, by the way, as far as the schedule release, I mean, kudos to every single person that is involved. This is basically their Super Bowl. And obviously, I know that the Broncos, with their schedule or with the jersey release and everything, kudos to them putting in all that hard work and everything with that schedule release video and everybody that was involved with that. I will say this, Brandon, and I don't mean, as far as a bad thing. It's just unfortunate with the schedule release day, or let alone a couple days before schedule release day, because a couple games leak here and there on social media, and then on the actual day itself, you get basically the 3/4 of the schedule or half the schedule. And so by the time you truly actually see the schedule, you're like, well, I already had a chance to see this.
I mean, at this point, people know what the schedule is. Like, they watch it for the entertainment value.
Yeah. So and maybe that's why they necessarily build the entertainment. So I think what would make it very fun and entertaining is we roll with the NFL draft idea. Let's not tip any picks. Let's not tip any games. And let's just roll with it. I don't know how hard that can be, but like, let's just roll with the idea of, we have no idea what the schedule is going to be, but let's roll with that idea and roll with the video and make it even more entertaining that way. So I don't know how long that it is going to be going till that trend, but I would much rather prefer it that way instead of, stuff leaking, like 2 days or even the day of, I should say, with the schedule release.
Yeah, I mean, I think at one point, like the entire, I don't know what account had it, but some account posted like our entire schedule in order, like at 4 or something.
Mhm.
But yeah, so let's pull it up here because I have some thoughts. I think the start to this season is kind of brutal, if I'm being honest. Like, you have like East Coast game, you go back home, you have to go kind of back to the East Coast. Like, it's going to be, or like you have to go coast to coast. I'm sorry. So you start on like the, you start more on the West Coast, you go back home, you have to go back to the East Coast. Like, you have so many away games. The amount of away games, road games that we're going to play here in the first, I think it's like 7 of the first 12 or something ridiculous. Yeah, it was on Aussie NFL. That was the one. The amount of away games we're going to have here in the beginning of this season is kind of brutal. Like, Bo Nix, welcome to the NFL, I guess, because this is going to be, I don't want to say trial by fire because like it's not that the teams themselves are going to be super difficult. Like, obviously Seattle is going to be hard with that defense. You get the Steelers, Russell Wilson revenge. I don't know if I can say revenge reunion. I guess you have to go to Tampa. The Jets we'll see how Aaron Rodgers looks by week 4 with that Achilles. But I just think the amount of like road games that we're going to have here initially, especially going like, once you kind of get past that initial kind of gauntlet of having like, basically once you get past week 8, you have to go Ravens on the road. Then you have to go to the Chiefs on the road. You go back home. Then you have to go to Vegas. Like that, the bye week is so late. I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Week 14 bye, that's disgusting.
Yeah, I think if you, for me personally, I actually don't mind the schedule. I actually like the fact that there's a little bit more balance, because I think that for me, what I don't necessarily like is something that you alluded to: 7 of the 12 games to begin the season are on the road. That is brutal. Like that is really, really brutal. They only have 2 primetime games, which I actually don't mind that.
I don't have a preference on. Yeah, I don't really care about the primetime.
Yeah, but and you mentioned the bye week. I thought that this was a little bit fascinating in the sense that I was doing a deep dive on the bye week, and I tweeted in terms of my overall preference, and I liked the sweet spot of 8 to 10 as far as being that bye week. I did a deep dive in terms of the bye weeks in the past for the Broncos, and I went on ESPN, called up some previous schedules. I think the furthest it went to was 2003. I never saw a Broncos schedule in the past that went further than like week 11. So week 14,
like making players play 13 games in a row is just inviting injury. That's just unsafe. Again, you can't say you care about player safety. Like, I feel like we've said this about every little thing. Like, every time the NFL makes a decision or does something, it's like, oh, you can't say you care about player safety. I mean, obviously, the kickoff rules, but it's kind of flies in the face of the statement a little bit. But you can't say you care about player safety and then do X, Y, Z, right? And this just kind of feels like the next in that list.
Yeah, and I mean,
brutal,
and especially in an 18-game season, it's really rough. I mean, I think it's also nice to look at this in a vacuum in a sense, because as far as a rookie football team, if you will, a very young football team, it at least affords them the opportunity. There's a con to it, of course, but I mean, the more that they play these games, right, the more that young offensive nucleus plays these games, the better they have that possibility of getting as the season progresses. The con, of course, is not just because of the fact that they're a young team, but just the overall team, and that is, what is the health of the team going to be like coming up to that bye? Because it can easily mean one way or another. But if their health is going smoothly into the bye week, then that's not bad. But if they're, should I say, limping into that bye week, there's a pretty decent chance, or a chance, that some of the significant players that are on that roster, it's probably beneficial for them to maybe hold out a little bit for the final stretch of those games, just in case they need to be ready for the playoffs, or and even on the vice versa side of things, rest them a little bit so they can play for those 4 remaining games, which to end the season is slightly brutal because you have the Colts and the Chargers and the Bengals and the Chiefs to end the season.
Yeah, I mean, again, having to go into it, like, if you have any playoff aspirations this year, which I know obviously you're going to be starting a rookie quarterback, like, that's probably unrealistic, but having to end the game, I know thankfully it's at home, but having to end the year with a game against Kansas City is just brutal. And honestly, having to end the year going Chargers, Bengals, Chiefs is brutal, because those are 3 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. That just sucks. I mean, Anthony Richardson too, and the Colts, like, if he, again, kind of depends on his health and like what he looks like coming back from that injury, but coming out of the bye, like, it's going to take so long to get to the bye, but then coming out of the bye is like, you better have your shit together, because it's going to be a gauntlet of the next 4 weeks. So if you go into that bye week and you're like still somewhat in the hunt for the playoffs, it's going to be real hard to get there with those remaining 4 games.
However, I will say this. However,
I think we're going to be the playoffs, but
I don't think so either. But I mean, the one thing that I will say though is, if you're looking at it just in the vein of what we were wanting to go for, I had 3 big requirements, if you will, as far as just the overall schedule. One, it didn't happen, and that was the bye week, as I said, within 8 to 10, right? However, 2 of the biggest requirements that I had, we ended up not getting. We did not. The NFL did the right thing. They did not give us a Christmas football game. They didn't give us a Christmas football game. They also did not give us a New Year's game at all, right? Obviously they can, but I mean, like, as far as just the fact that we're not going to get a Christmas game is so massive. Which, by the way, speaking of Christmas game, you know who is getting a Christmas game for 3 straight years? Russell Wilson.
No one wants Russell Wilson on Christmas. I'm sorry.
I should preface this by saying, and that's certainly possible in the sense that maybe he's not starting by then. It is at the latter part of the year. Maybe he's not starting, but it's brutal. 3 straight years for Russ, and he's playing on Christmas. The last one,
probably going to be benched by Christmas, honestly.
But the last piece that I was going to say is, I love the idea of playing Kansas City in Kansas City at the middle point of the season with November. And then at the end of the year, actually, for the first time in what seems like forever, them actually having a Kansas City game at home. Now, granted, things can certainly change on a dime, but I love the idea that, the Broncos at least, finished the season off with Kansas City. I mean, when was the last time, I feel like, Brandon, that they finished the season off against Kansas City? The only one that at least off the top of my head that I can recall was the 26 or the 2016 season when Paxton had that game against the Kansas City Chiefs against Patrick Mahomes. Funny enough, like, that's the only game that I can think of where it was like ending the season, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I really do like the idea of rounding out the rest of the year as far as like having that game, because regardless of what happens, having that kind of game in your back pocket, I think could motivate the Broncos, going forward.
I mean, it could definitely provide some motivation. I just think it's also going to be a hell of a test. Again, with just in those 4 weeks. I mean, thankfully, because that comes at the end, like I do think we have a decent start to the season here. Like, again, Seahawks defense is going to be difficult. Russell Wilson coming home to Denver for week 2. Like, he's just going to get booed, and I hope Pat Surtain picks him off 4 times. But I think we have like a decent opening start to like where Bo and this offense, this like very young offense, can start to kind of gel and get their feet under them a little bit and not be thrown into the fire. I mean, I know, again, with them being having to play so many games like on the road, they are kind of going to be thrown into the fire. At least Bo is as a rookie, but in terms of difficulty of like opponents, I think the beginning of the year here is pretty okay. A lot of that kind of hinges on Aaron Rodgers' health and what that's going to look like by week 4, where we'll probably have a better idea of like how back Aaron Rodgers is for the Jets. But I do think that's kind of nice. It's just going to be like, again, you kind of have to go through that gauntlet of you play 13 games in a row. Basically, you finally get that bye week. I hope in those 13 games you were able to kind of gel and get your feet under you, because you're going to face the finals, the test in the last 4. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's kind of more balanced, but I do think like it's pretty back heavy, where a lot of the challenge is going to come post bye, but the bye isn't going to be until week 14. I mean, and obviously we still play like that doubleheader of the Ravens on the road and then the Chiefs on the road is also going to be pretty brutal, but it's I wish there was a bit more balance just in terms of difficulty of opponent than what I'm seeing here.
I still think it's still rather balanced in terms of like what you overly see there, except for maybe the last 4 games. The one final thing I will say about the Kansas City Chiefs stuff is knowing what has happened with Kansas City, that game possibly could mean in the sense that Patrick Mahomes is not starting. They sit some starters, rest them for the playoffs. That can happen. Again, it's a fluid situation.
It's true.
We also know it is a divisional game. It's a rivalry game. Andy Reid, Sean Payton, they might actually not look at it that way and actually look at it just in the vein of let's have a really competitive football game. Now, one of the other questions that is always said, Brandon, is the idea of a trap game. I will say in this particular instance, for me, it's going to sound, I will say a little bit like somewhat of why would this necessarily be a trap game?
That's the point of a trap game.
No, I'm just saying as far as the opponent that I'm going to pick.
Yeah, but that's why it's a trap game. Is it's not, you don't expect it.
But maybe we have the same opponent. But I will go ahead and I will roll with the Carolina Panthers heading into the Baltimore Ravens. I realize it's the Carolina Panthers, but in the past, I mean, at least in the last game that the Broncos had with Russell Wilson, it wasn't necessarily the greatest game. Sam Darnold was at the helm, interestingly enough, but Bryce Young wasn't there. Obviously, you might have a much better system in place with Bryce Young, with Dave Canales. Who knows what things could unfold there, but that's not necessarily the point. The point is the Baltimore Ravens are your next opponent. And when it's a trap game, are you overlooking the Panthers in the vein of actually, having the opportunity to play the Ravens? So the Panthers for me is the trap game.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get where you're coming from with that. That wasn't really where my initial thoughts went when I was kind of looking at the schedule and trying to figure out where that trap would be. To me, that Panthers game kind of comes down to a couple specific things. Like Bryce Young, until he proves that he's the guy, I'm not going to be scared of him. And I know that that's not fair to him. And like his performance last year wasn't really, I would say, on him. I mean, obviously he came in, he was a rookie. The team around him was horrible. The ownership of this team in general is probably already the worst in the NFL, if I'm being honest. He doesn't really have a good weapon. The only reason that I'm the thing that just like to me, I'm looking at it, I'm like, what's going to happen here? Or could this become a challenge? Is two things specifically. They did draft him, Xavier Legette, who, if anyone listens to Xavier Legette, like give a press conference, this dude has the most Southern accent I've ever heard in my life, and I love it. Like I could listen to him for like 3 hours.
He needs a podcast.
Like him coming in, having kind of those first 7 weeks, and obviously the offseason to form a chemistry, I guess, with Bryce Young and that system with Dave Canales. Like Dave Canales is a good coach. That's the thing that that's kind of the other thing that to me is standing out to me when I'm thinking about this team is, could he turn this around? Maybe, I don't know. But the other kind of X factor in terms of on the roster that sort of just worries me a little bit is given how much we struggled to stop the run last year. And obviously I know we kind of turned it around in the second half of the year. And we brought in some guys that can stop the run, specifically like Roach from the Saints, who was brought in to bolster that defensive line, who's one of the best defensive linemen against the run. But they did draft Jonathan Brooks, and I believe the second round, who a lot of people had as kind of their number one back of the class. And he's just crazy talented. Dude's only 20. He's a 6 foot tall running back. Like he's a large man. He's not like Audric Estime, where he's like kind of shorter and built like a tank, but has the athleticism to like he runs pretty fast for a guy that is like having to obviously he has super long legs, he's super tall, and he can like cover a lot of distance that way, but he also runs quickly for a guy that is like so far away from the ground and is able to like generate that speed with those legs. His comparison that I've seen a lot of people kind of use for him is Jamal Charles, which former Bronco, Jamal Charles. That's the only team you ever played for, right? But Jonathan Brooks, just if he comes in and he takes what he did in college and translates that to the NFL, which as a running back, that's kind of the position where the rookies come in and you don't really see much of a drop off. That's what scares me, is Jonathan Brooks coming in and kind of being their immediate bell cow and taking a lot of the edge off of Bryce Young, and us not being able to stop the run, and them kind of leaning on that and using that to help Bryce, and then Bryce maybe having a bit more of that chemistry with Xavier Legette. That could be, something that would kind of scare me about that game, because otherwise I would look at the Panthers and I'm like, okay, well, this team is honestly horrible. And they were terrible last year, but they pretty much could only go up, and they got a new good coach. They got a talented running back. They're young in the second year of this offense. They have an okay defense, and they got him a weapon that we'll see how that pans out. But I could see that being a quote unquote trap game where you're kind of focusing on the Ravens, especially since you have to go to Baltimore and you kind of overlook the Panthers. But yeah,
I would actually go a step further and actually say it's maybe not necessarily the Ravens, but the Ravens and then the Chiefs following that. So you face the Ravens and the Chiefs in back-to-back road games. And I mean, and you mentioned it with maybe you're kind of talking yourself into the Panthers idea, possibly with it being a trap game, but I think the running game is a valid point. I mean, the Panthers, I wouldn't say underrated, but they do have maybe a running back group that is maybe somewhat slept on, right? They did add Jonathan Brooks. They still have Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders could maybe be a cap casualty, but they have Miles Sanders. They have Chuba Hubbard still there. So I mean, like, they have a pretty decent trio of running backs, and in Carolina, and you mentioned it, a running game is a young quarterback's best friend. Canales is coming from Tampa Bay, where he's had no shortage of running backs, in Tampa Bay. So I would not doubt the fact that they're probably going to be relying a little bit heavily on the running game. And the thing for me is, like, as far as trap game, it's hard for me to necessarily go with another game that could really fall into that category, possibly, of a trap game. Maybe, man, I really don't necessarily.
I have one.
Well, what is the one that you were going to say?
I hate it. I hate saying this. I hate bringing it up again. But honestly, the Seahawks, week 1 at the Seahawks on the road, that's a very tough place to play for Bo Nix, who's going to be coming in as a rookie, making his first start in the NFL. Tough location to do it in. Very passionate, loud fan base. And Geno Smith might recapture some of that magic that he had a couple years ago when, obviously I'm referring to the start of the Russell Wilson era, where we went into Seattle and basically, like, got embarrassed, and the Manning cast was kind of a meme because it was basically just like Peyton Manning reacting to, like, what the hell is Nathaniel Hackett doing? I mean, obviously it's a very different team in a lot of ways than the team that went into Seattle week 1 2 years ago. But that, I mean, it might be difficult. Like, you have Geno Smith coming off of the offseason where maybe he, again, kind of is able to prove he's not that 1-year wonder from that he was 2 years ago. I mean, he kind of fell off a little bit last year, but maybe he comes back in with a vengeance, and he's, people wrote him off again. He's motivated to prove that he can still be that guy. Their defense is going to be challenging. I think the Seahawks week 1, honestly, are going to be pretty difficult.
I actually have it as a win.
I think we could win it. I just think, I don't know if I'd say trap game, because it's not really something that you would like. I don't think we're going to look at it as like, oh, this is easy, but I just think it's going to be deceptively hard. I guess it depends on how you define a trap game, but yeah.
No, and obviously Russ is the very next game. But, like, I don't know. I think the Geno Smith stuff, I think that this particular game carries far more weight for the Broncos than it does the Seahawks, particularly now. And, and I think that for Geno Smith, I'm just going to be labeling it currently as it sits right now. Geno Smith is not a great quarterback right now. He had a great 1 year, and it happened to be the year when Russell Wilson, when Russell Wilson left. He had a great, and he's not a great quarterback. And I mean, I have a Seahawks friend whose brother really wanted Drew Lock to start for Seattle last year. Like,
what if Drew Lock starts that week 1? Oh my God, Drew Lock versus Bo Nix, the Drew Lock revenge game.
No, Drew Lock is with the Giants, buddy.
I forgot that Drew Lock went to the Giants. Wow. When did that happen again?
And this offseason.
This offseason? I see. I don't really pay attention to the Giants. Okay, well that helps.
Yeah. But I mean,
it's not going to happen. Thank God.
But no,
I mean, you're not wrong about Geno Smith. Like, I don't know. I'm just curious to know what he's going to come out and do. Is he going to be the Geno that we saw last year, which was kind of the Geno that we saw every other year except for 2022? We'll see. Who else is even on Who else is in that quarterback room for them?
Sam Howell.
Oh, that's right. They did do that trade.
But see, here's the thing. This is the twist for me with Bo Nix. I actually think that this is a good thing for the Broncos to be starting out with Seattle because, yeah, it's a very, very hostile environment. That said, Bo Nix is actually going to a very familiar environment, and actually one that he's actually well adjusted to and well acclimated to, and that being Washington. And given the fact that he's played Washington so much and that he's played, in that neck of the woods, if you will, I think at least will give him comfortable enough, right? And comfortable enough, necessarily in that kind of environment. And obviously I should say the environment itself, the sound decibels. I mean, like that speaks volumes. That pun intended there. But like it speaks volumes to how loud that that game gets and just the environment can be. So, but I actually think that the environment there for Knicks is a bit underrated to a degree, like in the sense that I think people are maybe wrapping themselves around it too much in the sense that the Broncos will not necessarily adapt well, when I actually think that it could be on the flip side in the sense that because Bo had the experience of playing in Washington and having all those games with Washington and facing Penix, that he's just going into another battle. Like it's just another day in the office for him going to, play in Washington. So this does not change. This does not change for me. As far as the overall win-loss floor for the Denver Broncos, Brandon, I personally feel like the floor for this team is 7 for 7 wins, and the ceiling is 10. So that doesn't change. That certainly doesn't change. And as I say earlier, again, I think that maybe.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair.
And yeah, so I think that I should preface this in the sense of like this. Getting it out of the way, and I know we'll do our predictions and everything, right before the season starts, right before that Thursday kickoff of the Ravens and the Chiefs. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I do not have the Denver Broncos in the playoffs, and that's just how we objectively should look at it.
No, I definitely don't think we're going to make the playoffs. I think if we are having playoff aspirations, again, it's going to be super difficult coming out of that week 14 bye week. Like if we're in the hunt going into that bye and then we have to come out of it and go through that gauntlet, like I don't see that. I don't see us making the playoffs. Like with a rookie quarterback, it's just probably not feasible. But I think that floor of 7, ceiling of 10 is pretty fair and accurate. Obviously we had 8. We went 8-9 last year, kind of
right
middle of the pack from the beginning of the year. You kind of thought you were going to maybe go, 1-17, 1-16. But obviously we kind of turned it around. I don't know. We'll see. I think it's going to be all dependent to me on the offense. I mean, I think Vance Joseph now had the turnaround the second half of the year last year to kind of figure out the defense and get them to buy into the changes that he made. We made a bunch of roster personnel changes on the defensive line with who is starting, released some guys, traded some guys, and got a lot better. So he's had the second half of last season. He's had all of the offseason to kind of keep that going. And I don't foresee, thankfully we are not, playing the Dolphins, but I don't foresee that being like an issue. So I think the defense is going to be okay, and it's really all going to be about Bo Nix.
Yeah. But I think, of course, the other thing that is, worth talking about and worth mentioning within this is there's also the possibility that the Broncos could steal one. And, to go back to the people can label it a fluky winning streak and, and all this. But at the end of the day, it happened. That 5-game winning streak, it happened. It propelled them that rest of the way, got them into playoff contention for the first time in, 8 years. It was an exhilarating time to be a Broncos fan. It was a lot of fun. And I think that as far as this particular game, and people that are in the chat, I know we recently just mentioned win-loss column. Feel free to chime in the chat what you guys feel like is the win-loss floor and ceiling for the Denver Broncos. But I would not be surprised, because the NFL has done some fluky things in the past, right, Brandon? I would not be surprised if Baltimore, as I just talked about Carolina, being the trap game. I will just go out on a limb here and I will just say this. I wouldn't be surprised if Baltimore is a game that the Broncos actually steal. And the reason why I say that is because
in Baltimore, yeah. Why do you say that?
In Baltimore, because I just feel like there are games, home or away, there are just games that just feel like they're games the Ravens should win and they end up losing. And I'm not saying that's going to be the game that the Broncos steal, but I'm certainly looking at a game like that. In the case of
if Bo Nix goes into Baltimore and wins against that Ravens defense and Lamar Jackson,
I'm not saying it's going to happen though. I'm just saying that like the Ravens.
No, I know. I'm saying like, damn, if that does happen, that's impressive.
And I wouldn't say it's a steal of a win per se, but because of given what happened last year, it's at least worth monitoring. Given the situation, and will Anthony Richardson play a full season finally? If Anthony Richardson is unavailable come, the end of the season, when the Broncos play the Colts, that becomes a bit of a more doable game, right? It becomes a bit of a doable game. Maybe the question, maybe the Browns game, right? The Browns.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, like with the Anthony Richardson stuff, like, yeah, he wasn't able to finish the whole season, but he also was like a rookie. Like, I don't think I would, it's almost necessarily fair to say he's like injury prone or like have concerns about him not being able to finish the season. To me, it's all about like how much can he come back from the shoulder surgery on his throwing arm. And he has a lot of time to do it, but, yeah, that's going to be an insane game. The main reason I'm thankful that we're not going to be playing on Christmas is I do not want to have to watch this game on Netflix. Thank God. But yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at this schedule, to me, like, where would you say at what point would you say like take the training wheels off of Bo Nix? And what I mean by that is, I know like I'm saying this based on a schedule, which is not fair, and you need to basically make that decision based on like what he shows you. But what I mean by that is like how at what point in the season do you feel like there's enough, he's had enough time to kind of get past the learning curve and you can start to kind of analyze and make a decision about him and his like honestly future on this team in an actual game. And the reason I say that, I know he's going to be a rookie, but we've seen time and time again, and Anthony Richardson is actually a good example of this. Like rookie quarterbacks are coming into the NFL and they're finding a way to prove early on that they're the guy. And as a rookie show flashes, and even show more than flashes and have a Justin Herbert-esque rookie season, have an Anthony Richardson-esque rookie season, CJ Stroud, oh my God, where like they're literally, it's not even a rookie season. It's this guy looks like he belongs, and you can just tell right away. Obviously, beginning of the season, it's going to be tough to make that evaluation right away. But I would feel like once you get into probably that Saints Panthers stretch where you kind of you've had some road games, you've gotten past some of those tough opponents in, like, again, the Seahawks, the Aaron Rodgers game. You've had that first in-division duel second in-division duel, but the reason I say first in-division duel, like with an actual legitimate quarterback in Justin Herbert at home against the Chargers. I feel like once you get into that area of his rookie year, like, you're at a point where it's like, okay, he's had some time to gel with this offense. Like, what is he showing us? Because I do think it's not unfair to say in his rookie season, you can determine if this guy is going to be your long-term starter. I mean, I know it's not necessarily a given that always happens, but we've seen just way more recently that's kind of just what rookie quarterbacks are able to do now.
Maybe it's me. We should throw this out here. I know Brandon, he already knows where this is going because we also play the Jets again. We'll have a nice little sit down with our friend Scott Mason of Play Like a Jet that week, where we basically do a show pre and post, sitting down with him talking about the New York Jets game against the Denver Broncos. It seems like a theme lately with Play Like a Jet, based on how things have gone. Brandon knows this, but just the way that things have gone with the schedules and stuff of Broncos playing the Jets lately. Now, why do I say the Jets? Is actually because I could feel like maybe the Bo Nix getting comfortable. Say he gets past that Jets game and he plays really well. I think that game will be the determining factor for me about how true and how comfortable he is within this offense.
Really, that early? Because he's only going to have one home game in that whole stretch.
And the reason why I feel that way is because there's an argument to be made that Jets defense might in fact be the best defense they will play of that entire stretch between from even Seattle, all even maybe up until Baltimore. So if Nix comes out and actually plays really well and comes away with a victory and just manages the game exactly the way it needs to be, I wouldn't be surprised if the optimism, the Bo Leaf, in Bo is through the roof, if you will, if that ends up happening. But also, I can see the flip side of it. If it doesn't go according to plan, I hate to even say it, but with it also being the Jets game, the Zach Wilson hype will get maybe a little bit louder and louder, in the sense of they played the Jets. Zach Wilson certainly couldn't have done worse against a team like this, knowing the fact that he's practiced with them and and everything. So I feel like the Jets game for me is the one where if he performs at a level that is capable of winning that particular football game, then that means that he could win really any football game on this roster, depending on how certainly that goes, whether that is running the football or meticulously moving the football down the field and hitting 10 different wide receivers, or and just playing efficient football against the Jets. Like, I think that if that can continue, I truly feel like that could be a season turner with him facing the Jets, and particularly on the road.
Be a hell of a game. Now let's get into the important question. At what point on this schedule are we wearing their throwback uniforms?
Maybe that's what they should have done with the jersey or with the schedule release. Don't bother about doing a schedule release. Have the actual schedule release be the jersey release of like what jerseys they're wearing on particular days. And actually, apparently, right, there was word that they can wear them up to 3 times, right? They
because I just have to say that week 2 at home, where Russell Wilson comes back to Denver and we're going against him with our potential franchise quarterback replacement for him, where we wear the best uniform in pro sports, would just hit different.
It would actually be they won't do this, but I will tell you what would be the chef's kiss. Granted, they probably are wearing it at home, is my guess, unfortunately. But what would be great is if they wore the throwbacks in the Seattle game. And it was a throwback game of the Broncos and Seahawks to kick off the year, where the Seahawks were wearing their throwback uniforms, Broncos were wearing their throwback uniforms, and that's how the season starts. That would be
pretty cool because the Seahawks throwback uniforms might be the second best. Like those are clean. Yeah, that would be insane.
Maybe another one. This would be kind of fun. Maybe another one be maybe the Falcons game, where the Falcons wear maybe their throwback uniform, and the Broncos wear their throwback uniform.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this schedule as we see it right here?
As far as we should probably also talk about this. So the Broncos, they also this is one of the first times also in a bit that they will be playing an opponent twice on the year, because one of those opponents is in preseason. How much do you think that benefits actually playing an opponent?
Not at all. Not even remotely close.
Because they are actually playing the Indianapolis Colts, the very first game preseason on August 11th.
I don't think it makes a difference at all. Not even slightly, because the preseason is a totally different animal. It's a different beast. It's a game, but it's not really a game. I mean, are we going to see Bo Nix start in the preseason? Because that'd be interesting. But I put no stock in us happening to play a regular season opponent early by playing them in the preseason, because it's going to be so different from when we play them week 15. A different start. Like, you're probably going to see obviously different players. I don't foresee the Colts playing Anthony Richardson preseason week 1. Depends on how they decide to go about it. Every team is different in terms of deciding to play starters, but obviously Anthony Richardson coming back from that shoulder injury, like I don't see that happening at all.
Nathaniel Hackett didn't play the starters at all.
Hackett didn't play the starters at all. It depends on the coach, but especially with that injury, like I think that just the team's going to be so different. They're going to run a basic vanilla playbook. I don't think it matters in the slightest.
Here's another. I want to go a little bit back on our Bo Nix conversation just for a second.
Well, the other thing I wanted to bring up before we dive into something else is I did want to talk about rookie minicamp. So,
just real
I think
quick,
this might factor into that.
Yeah, but the reason we just talked about how when Bo Nix hits his stride, right? I will go. Let me just go with this angle a little bit here, because now that Sean Payton has Bo Nix, he has his quarterback that is probably going to be his quarterback here until his contract is out. Not just Bo Nix's probably, but also his. I'm very curious to see, and this is not just a Bo Nix thing, but obviously a team thing in general. I'm very curious to see how he handles the preseason this year. Because as we know, the Broncos in that 2023 preseason, they were rolling their starters out relatively speaking a lot in the preseason, and they needed to, right? They needed to. We just referenced about Nathaniel Hackett not playing any of the starters in the preseason that he had. Massive mistake, as it turned out. But the argument could be made Sean Payton should do it again, right? That he actually probably should do it again with particularly a guy like Bo Nix, because the more reps that he can necessarily have in an NFL environment, the better he will be in the long run, because of the fact that he is actually being rolled out there and actually getting that experience and actually getting that ample playing time, whether it be preseason or not. So I'm very curious to see this, because based on rookie camp too, and even based on rookie camp, Nix looked fantastic from all accounts. Nix looked fantastic. You don't want to put too much stock in it, but he looked fantastic. Devon Vele looked good, right?
That's what I was going to bring up. Is Devon Vele seems to be trending towards the yearly gem undrafted free agent that this team inevitably somehow finds.
The Jordan Taylor of the world.
Him wearing 81 just makes it more, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I just continue to see people gushing about Devon Vele being.
Did you see my RAS?
God.
Did you see my RAS score on here? So
no.
So get this. People, and rightfully so, and I mean, Sean Payton made the comparison to Tim Patrick, right? For Vele.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, in Sean Payton's first draft with the New Orleans Saints in 2006, he took Marcus Colston in the 7th round, pick 252. He took Devon Vele in his second draft, 7th round, pick 235. Both are 6'4". The only difference necessarily is Colston's 224 and Vele's 203. Obviously, the weight distribution, everything for Vele, actually, I would imagine is actually going to go up. The more he's actually gets playing time and everything. So I would venture to guess that that's actually going to be going up. I think people are making a smart comparison necessarily in the Tim Patrick stuff, but I would not be surprised if Marcus Colston is actually the one that we should be looking at and not Tim Patrick, because of, size, Sean's familiarity with a guy like a Colston, so I love the idea of still using him as a big slot. And we talked about this briefly on 5280, Brandon, but I think that
Sean Payton himself compared him to Tim Patrick.
Right. But I'm just saying, I think we're probably looking at it maybe in essence like a Colston situation, not necessarily as a Patrick thing, but I think of all the people that I will say that probably could spell the end for Courtland Sutton, it's Devon Vele. Depending on how Vele does, specifically in training camp and preseason, possibly could result in a situation of, will Courtland Sutton actually end up being a camp casualty versus a trade candidate?
I don't know if I'd go that far. And the main reason I don't know about that, but that's a hot take. They are very similar size-wise. I will say, though, Devon Vele is only 2 years younger than Courtland Sutton. You're not exactly getting younger at the position by doing that. I'd rather have the veteran presence, but I mean, if there's still maybe some trade suitors out there, maybe, but I just don't see, I definitely don't see us cutting Courtland Sutton if we didn't trade him. There were definitely offers on the table for him. Maybe there weren't offers that we loved, but I can't see us turning down an opportunity to get compensation for him and then go in and cut him from training camp or after training camp, because you're getting nothing. But
I know it's
hot take.
Because but think about it, because they're clearly not gauging interest, and maybe they're balking at the idea of, they possibly aren't necessarily going to be trading him, but they're possibly actually going to be cutting him. But like Audric Estime looked really, really good as far as with training camp. And you know who also looked good, Brandon? A certain draft crush of yours. And one that was, one that you mentioned even before they even signed him as an undrafted free agent. And that being Blake Watson.
Blake Watson. Mm-hmm.
This guy over here was almost the should I say the starter of the Watson hive. That's what people always used to call things, right? Like
did you see what Sean Payton said about him?
Mm-hmm.
Sean Payton compared him to Alvin Kamara. It's like he said not to compare him to Kamara, but to compare him to Alvin Kamara. Listen, Blake Watson. You want to talk about camp casualties? I don't know, but there might be multiple from the running back room. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's it. I will say if there's an overreaction to the rookie minicamp, it's probably the running back.
Is it though?
Group. Well,
is it no reaction? Is it no reaction? Blake Watson averaged 6 yards per carry his senior year.
I get it, but we also have to look at it realistically in the sense of like it's just rookie minicamp. Now, if it continues and it progresses,
remember what I said about running backs coming in as rookies and being.
Oh no,
I'm just giving you shit. I'm just kidding.
No, I agree with you, but I'm just saying like, I think that if you're looking at it though, I'm personally expecting them to carry 4 running backs. That said though, the question, it may actually end up becoming, certainly you and I view the Audric Estime situation maybe a little bit differently, with Javonte Williams versus Samaje Perine, right? As far as who's on the bubble. But the point is, like, you enter Blake Watson into the mix and all bets are off of possibly who's on the roster bubble because,
I have a specific player I think might be on the roster bubble.
But I'm just saying at that point, all parties of the trio are on the roster bubble. Ryan, Javonte, and Jaleel specifically. My personal take has been even since last week and a couple weeks ago, and you and I talked about is Jaleel.
I was gonna say Jaleel is the guy that I think would be, unfortunately,
that's not going to say well.
On the bubble.
And you and I said that's not going to say well with Broncos country, but you're talking about a player that is more refined, bigger. Like he's truly a former wide receiver converted to running back. He's got those traits in him. He's clearly beloved by Sean Payton this early on. Now, to be fair, Jaleel was too. Jaleel was beloved by Sean, this point last year. And I think maybe one of the other reasons why maybe you should be starting to look at Perine a little bit as a cap casualty. I hate to phrase this way because it's a phrase that is rolled around a lot when it is in correlation to people and everything like people feel like Jamal Murray is a Jokic merchant, right? And we'll talk about the Nuggets here in just a little bit, right?
You're gonna have to explain that one to me.
No, I'm just saying in general. I'm just using that as like a general like comment.
I know. I've just never heard anyone say that.
I made that up. I'm just.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. My point though is, are we looking at the Perine situation in the sense that he was just a Russell Wilson merchant?
What do you mean by that?
What do you mean by that?
Like when you say that he was a Russell Wilson merchant, you're saying that he only looked as useful and effective as he did because Russell Wilson passed to him 95% of the time? I mean, I get that, but he did prove that you could rely on him in the pass catching role because they used him that frequently.
He did, but it's at least, I'm not saying he is, but I'm just saying it's maybe at least.
I mean, I get it. Like, I get the reason you might say that he's on the roster bubble. I think it's last year of his deal. We talked about it last week. He's actually not that. How old did we say he was?
He
because he's one of those guys that feels like he's been in the league for like 18 years, but he's actually
probably what, 27?
I think he's like 28. Let me find out.
It's got to be. He's definitely not 30, but yeah, it's got to be probably.
He's 28. He's 28. He's not that old. I mean, it feels like he's been in the league for a long time, but that's just because on the Bengals, he was kind of like just buried in the depth chart. He was just like the backup guy that they kind of brought in. So like, I think he just has more tread on the tires than you'd expect. I think he's proven that he's a good pass catcher. I also think he's proven that he's a better pass blocker than honestly maybe anyone else in that room.
I agree
if I'm being honest. And I think that is what would keep him around. That's why I think that Blake Watson would be more of the Jaleel McLaughlin replacement. Because unfortunately Jaleel and Blake, that's kind of their downside is they aren't good blockers. They aren't good blocking running backs in terms of pass protection, just because they're so small. But I do think that Samaje is a good pass blocker, and that's going to be kind of what keeps him around. But you bring up a good point about like, we haven't really seen, we've pretty much only seen him used as in that like one role of, okay, he's kind of your goal line back, and he's like Russ Wilson's going to throw him like 40 screens. So, I mean, if anything, if we do keep Samaje Perine around, I think we could maybe find some more creative and effective ways to utilize him. But yeah, someone in that room is gone. I don't know who it is, but someone's gone, and Blake Watson is probably going to stick around because that guy is the truth, and he's going to be. I can't stop hiccuping. He's going to be the Alvin Kamara. I mean, Alvin Kamara was more shifty, but
yeah. Let me just say it this way, because me and Brandon started it, but now we are the co-starters of the Blake Watson hype train. So anybody that feels like they've started the whole hype train with Watson, it was Brandon and I the ones that really started it. But
it could also be
particularly Brandon. But the one thing I was just going to say about Watson, and this is just, if you are in 12 to 14 team dynasty leagues, stash away Blake Watson and put him on your taxi squad. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, we might see a situation where Blake Watson, the combination of Blake Watson and Audric Estime, are the combination that would relieve Jaleel McLaughlin and Samaje Perine. I almost said Javonte, maybe. Samaje Perine. I do think Samaje would stick around again for one more year because of his pass blocking skills, but I don't see us re-signing him. Audric would probably take his spot. So I'm excited to see Blake Watson. I want to see Blake Watson. You're probably going to see in the preseason. Blake Watson is probably going to be that. Again, you kind of happen to see those guys that sort of go off in the preseason. We saw that with. Good.
Oh, he might be one of those guys.
He might be the running back that explodes in the preseason that just kind of comes out of nowhere and breaks off a 50-yard touchdown, or runs a great route and out of the backfield and catches a passing touchdown. So we'll see. But Blake Watson, hell yeah.
Let's go a step further. I want to ask you this, because we talked about both players are on expiring contract. Who has the most to prove?
Are you between Samaje and Javonte? Probably Javonte. Honestly, not even probably. Javonte by far.
I would tend to agree.
Javonte by far, because Javonte has to prove that he can come back from that multiple ligament knee injury and be the shifty, I say shifty, surprisingly shifty for his size, but just complete bulldozer back that no one can break down. I don't know if it's going to happen, because that's a very, very tough injury for any player, but especially a player at that position. The biggest issue is, like, unfortunately, the weaknesses of Javonte's game that we saw were not physical. Like, his physical talent is his strength, and that's what's affected by this injury. Like we talked about him not having the best vision, but he kind of made up for it because it takes the entire Ravens defense to tackle him. And he still carries them for like 20 yards. But I think Audric comes in and is a similar role, similar kind of player, has a better vision than Javonte does. And I think the biggest knock against Audric Estime is that people think he's slow, but if they watched him actually play, because he's faster than he looks when you watch him like run the 40. When he's in pads, he's one of those guys just funny. When they're in pads, they're faster.
I will say that,
we'll see. But I definitely think it's Javonte.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's Javonte. Samaje, I think, has something to prove. And actually, I think it's to what I just said earlier. Is he a Russell Wilson merchant, right? I think that's at least a layer of this. Like, is he a Russell Wilson merchant? I think that he would want to prove in this particular year he was more than just a Wilson merchant. Like, he's actually, a player that is far more reliable, than just, passes like that, or, even third down or even 2-minute warning. Like, he wants to prove that he's like that kind of guy. Fun little thing about Audric Estime. I heard this somewhere. He was clocked. Estime was clocked at 21 miles an hour at one point at Notre Dame.
I didn't see that.
He was clocked at 21 miles an hour. Tyreek Hill is notorious for being maybe the fastest person alive, right? But I mean, that was like 23 miles an hour. It's kind of like the same argument every once in a while, like, where like arm strength, or like when people like clock like the miles per hour, like, for an arm, like Milton was clocked at 62 miles an hour. JJ and Nix were like 61 and 60, right? Like miles per hour on throw. Well, it's like, if you have 21 miles an hour of Audric Estime running at you,
good luck.
I pray for you.
Yeah, good luck.
I pray for you. Speaking as far as sending some prayers a little bit, or maybe not so much, the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves are on the ropes, Brandon. The Minnesota Timberwolves.
I thought the series was over, Stephen A. Okay, well, hold on. I will say I respect Stephen A. Smith, because dude came out 2 different times and apologized. Like, the first time he was just like, yeah, I was wrong. And then after we won last night, he came out this morning. I think it was this morning, he was last night, and basically says, like, that was one of the worst predictions and takes that I've ever had. I am ashamed and embarrassed, and that if we go on to win this series, he's going to come to Denver and do an apology tour. I'm not a Stephen A. Smith fan, but honestly, respect, man. You owned up to it, and I appreciate it. But no, was that the? So I actually have to ask this question. I've seen this kind of floating around, and the more I think about it, like when I first saw it, I was like, "That's ridiculous. That's preposterous." But the more I think about it, it might not be wrong. I've seen people say that was the best game of Jokic's career.
So,
and honestly, they might not be wrong.
We should also say this too. I would venture to guess a lot of us felt like this had the chance to possibly be a rather quick series. The way that the Timberwolves took a 2-0 advantage, winning 2 at home. Like, because I will tell you, I'm sure Brandon, saw it, but I mean, I was at game 2. It was a very disappointing game to be at. Like, that was, if I wanted to watch something that pitiful and that disappointing, I would have called up all 8 years of Bronco games and watched something so pitiful, which is quarterback play, or even Super Bowl 48. If I wanted to watch something that pitiful, I would, rather watch something like that than something like that in person. Like, that was so bad. I mean,
they hit us in the chin, but then we came back in Minnesota and knocked their teeth out.
But so here's the thing. I don't know how necessarily to explain it, But I just think it's very interesting in the sense that in those two games, and it was at home, Jokic was not himself. Jokic was not himself.
That whole team was not themselves. That was not the Nuggets team that I
we know
have grown
that
to love.
But we know that Jokic is really the straw that stirs the drink for that team.
Oh yeah, no. In terms of Jokic specifically, he definitely was having some off games.
But he wins the MVP. He actually says, how much he actually enjoyed winning the MVP this year, which was, to be fair, like a first for him. In terms of like the first time he won it, the second time he won it, this was kind of a first in the sense of like it truly felt like you got that appreciation from him that he really enjoyed winning the MVP. Well, guess what happened after? So the MVP is over with. After he was awarded the MVP, they go on a 3-0 tear, beating Minnesota on a 3-game winning streak. They do the unthinkable, basically evening up the series in Minnesota. The field goal percentage is darn near close, 60%. And in basketball standards, that is very impressive. He turns Rudy Gobert.
He had Rudy Gobert in hell, man.
he turned Gobert into like
4-time defensive player of the year, Gobert, who honestly, I don't know if he deserves that. I'm not going to lie. He is a very, very good defensive player. I think Anthony Davis is better. I do think Rudy Gobert is probably top 5. But the way you would think when you watched him last night is that it kind of looked like a defensive, like a D1 athlete playing against a middle schooler, because he could stop. Okay. This is not news. Like ever since Gobert was even in Utah, which actually I'm pretty sure we drafted Gobert originally. Him and Donovan Mitchell, we drafted both of them and we traded him.
Donovan Mitchell, I do know.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell, I know we did. I think we drafted Rudy Gobert. I'll double check on this. But
but again, when we say drafted, we technically drafted him for Utah.
I'll have to go and look. I don't know exactly how that was set up. That might have been what it was. But essentially, going back to when Rudy Gobert was on the Jazz, it didn't matter. Like, he couldn't stop Jokic. Like, this is not new. But it felt, I think at one point one of the announcers said this, I don't know who exactly it was, but it was totally accurate. It felt personal. It felt like every single time Jokic was handed the ball, he was like, all right, where is he? Where's Gobert? Bring him to me. And then just like proceeded to just dismantle him every single time. You had the just insane like pivot hook shot that went in that just like Gobert was like, what are you supposed to do? You had that shot where Jokic was like kind of going into the post a little bit. And I don't exactly know how to describe this, but it was like sort of a fadeaway, sort of a. It kind of looked like he just like fell over and he just like shot it. He just like threw the ball. He didn't even shoot. He just threw the ball and it just like happened to go. It was one of the craziest shots I've ever seen, and he was fouled.
Was that the play that hit like the front of the rim and then?
Yeah, it was that one.
And then,
yeah, it was like, how did that go in? And then just the 3-point, just the cherry on top 3-pointer that kind of was shades of when he did that on Anthony Davis. Last year. Just all around, that was one of the best. That was Nikola Jokic is a top 10 player of all time in the NBA. I'm dead serious, fully confident in this.
Yeah.
Just enjoy him. Just enjoy watching him while you can, because every single game is, even on his games where it's not as, he's not having a massive game, he's not putting up 40, which did you see, first of all? So he was, I think, the second player ever in a playoff game to have like 40, 10, and no turnovers. Did you see at the very end of the game where basically Jokic had the ball to like run out the clock and end the game? And they were going to take the 24-second violation. It was going to count as a turnover.
Yeah,
ECP runs over and takes the ball from him so that he gets the turnover, and Jokic doesn't get the turnover.
Yeah, that is
cinema. But just holy shit, that entire game.
That was the Martin Scorsese absolute cinema. Like right. So I've made this comparison every once in a while. I tweeted it to Cody. Actually, I tweeted it to Cody today. It pains me to say this, but when you see greatness, like I mean, I may not necessarily appreciate maybe some of the antics and stuff off the field for, say, Patrick Mahomes, or even on the field at times, like when it's, necessarily, but the play actually on the football field, it makes you appreciate the greatness and stuff that you've been seeing from guys like Patrick Mahomes or even Tom Brady. And I made this comparison in the past. Nikola Jokic reminds me of Tom Brady, because Brady, when he came into the league as a 7th round draft pick or a late round draft pick, a lot of people looked at him in the combine like, who is this goofy character? Who is this goofy quarterback? And you put him on a football field and he makes throws left and right that just drop, like that have your mouth dropping to the floor. Like, what is this? What are we watching? Jokic is the same way. Like I love this comparison. I don't know where I heard it from. It may have been an Instagram reel, may have been something on, a podcast or something, but he is the world's, he is basically the best the YMCA player on the field, or on the court necessarily. And he balls out every single time. And it just surprises you to no end, because you look at him and like, how is this guy pulling it off? And that's exactly the way that it is with Nikola Jokic, because let me actually even put this in the conversation of the way Sean Payton described it, in the sense of Bo Nix, is in terms of golf, in the sense of like, boring in essence. It's boring. It is actually boring in a good way to actually watch Nikola Jokic, because he is 1 to 2 steps ahead of every single person on the court. Like, and the fact that he is 1 to 2 steps above everybody else, even his own teammates. And actually,
did you see the Aaron Gordon quote about this?
Yeah, it's so impressive. And frankly, this is a hot take. Whoever wins this series with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets goes to the NBA Finals.
Oh, not even a hot take. 100%. 100%. Who are we going to play? Who's going to beat us? Well, who's going to beat us in the West? The Timberwolves were the biggest challenge.
We love you, Matty.
They are the biggest challenge. The Thunder might not even beat the Dallas. Like, who's winning? Hold on.
You could call up the
Mavs are winning by 14.
And and if the Mavs win, they don't necessarily have size. I would say, like, they don't necessarily have size.
Also, the Mavs have. I will give it to the Mavs. Luka, insane. Please, for the love of God, I want Luka and Jokic on the same team so bad, but I refuse for Jokic to ever leave the Nuggets. So Luka, you got to come to Denver. Them's the rules. Yeah. But no, Luka and Kyrie, elite duo. Derek Jones also pretty good, but just like, I feel like that whole team. Here's the thing that just like I can't stop thinking about. That I don't understand how so many NBA team coaches, like not even coaches, I guess managers, like how many teams in the NBA don't seem to get this. Everyone's all about, okay, who else can we add to this team to get us over the hump? And I'm not saying that's incorrect, because like to a point, yes, that's how you build NBA teams.
That's how you
looking at the Nuggets. We need to add to this bench. Christian Brown, I love. I think Peyton Watson, hell of a defensive player, is just really, really young. Like, we just have our bench is so young. That's why I miss Bruce Brown so much, because he was like the veteran guy that came in and even even yeah. But going back to what I was saying before about, I mean, like, yes, to a point, that's what you need to do, but I don't think that they are giving nearly enough respect to chemistry. We talk about chemistry in the NFL all the time, with the chemistry between a quarterback and his offensive coordinator, chemistry between a quarterback and his receivers, the chemistry between the offensive line, the chemistry between the offensive line and the quarterback. Everything is about knowing the players around you and what they're going to do. Chemistry is almost more important in the NBA. And no one seems to realize this because everyone's like, especially look at the Suns. The Suns are like, oh, we're just going to sign a super team. Everyone's the years of the super team. Go out and spend all the money on all the free agents you want, make trades, do whatever you can. The Suns come in, they're on that. I don't know exactly how the new thing works with the cap because it's just kind of confusing to me, but they're on the second, I think it's the second court, like whatever that kind of scale is, where they're screwed. Like they're in trouble because they are way too much over the cap. But they got bounced in. Were they swept? I think they were swept in round one. Hold on.
I mean,
I'll find this out. But anyway, you have teams coming in trying to do that. What have the Nuggets done? They've played it slow. They've built this team. And these guys have played together. Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic have played together for 8 years. You play together for that long, you know each other's tendencies. You can do the kind of things that we're able to do in the two-man game with the pick and roll and just everything that this team is able to do because this team has chemistry and they know each other and they know how they play. Whereas the rest of the NBA is like, oh, well, we're just going to take all these superstars and mash them up and put them in on a team together. I was trying to go with like a chili gumbo, putting things into a pot reference. Just didn't come together. And they're like, yeah, that's going to clear us. Like, that's going to work. I can't seem to understand why they don't realize that doesn't work. We've seen teams do that all the time, and it doesn't work. The Lakers all the time. Who else can we add? The most recent thing I saw, I think, was bring Donovan Mitchell to the Lakers, and that'll solve everything. Like, okay, whatever.
Draft
but
Bronny
just the
James.
chemistry. Oh my God, 6'1", 6'1", Bronny James, who's averaged 3 points. Anyway, it's special. That's the point. I got off on a tangent, but it's just so special.
Well, and I think that the other part of this too that makes it so so impressive is, especially within this series, there's two things is that I was going to touch on, and that's the patience that the Kroenke organization has given to not just, guys like Michael Malone, but Jared Bednar. Like when you show patience to like those types of coaches, it pays off. Like there was a point in time where both coaches were on the hot seat.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Both coaches were on the hot seat. Frankly, it might even have been the same year where they were roughly on the hot seat. And the year that that Bednar was on the hot seat, they went out and won that Stanley Cup. Right? They went out and won that Stanley Cup. And then the year that the Nuggets actually went out and won the NBA Finals was a certain stretch where things were looking very bleak and very bad for Malone as far as, should he still maintain, being the coach of the Denver Nuggets. And you know what? They stayed true to it. They stayed true to the colors. And I'll tell you, even as far as patience, it even trickles down to how Malone is managed. His patience for how he even has handled the whole Jamal Murray situation has paid serious dividends. For the Denver Nuggets. Like it's paid serious dividends for that, and I think that it, and so much so that with that patience, it's man, maybe this is something that a previous person had kind of previously installed, but the fact that the Denver Nuggets of all teams are beating the sole creator, if you will, of a vast majority of the team that is on that floor, meaning Tim Connolly, who had
constructed. I was going to say it's the Tim Connolly Bowl.
Like it's Tim Connolly Bowl. The fact this might actually end up being the most impressive thing that the Nuggets have been doing in this series.
That the Timberwolves were built in a lab to stop the Nuggets.
Exactly.
First 2 games of the series, that defense was
suffocating.
Insane. You see people talk about top defense the past decade of the NBA. It took Jokic 2 games to figure it out, and then just beat him by double digits.
Like, and that's the thing. That's when you know that you have reached. That's when you know you've reached greatness, because when and that goes to the head coach of Michael Malone, because if you have Malone and he's using that overall patience with a guy like Jokic and grooming him and becoming the player that we truly have seen, you appreciate it on a nightly basis. You appreciate it on practice, so that if you do see a great defensive game in a particular series or 2 games, you just tip your cap. But however, because of greatness, you flip that switch and you become that God mode type player that Jokic has turned into these last 3 games, where he turns Gobert into a blender. Like it's just like he's got him.
Chicken alert.
He's caught him on the ropes. Like he has got him on the ropes, and it's unbelievable. Like
you want to know. You want to know who Jokic reminds me of? I've just thought of this, and actually it makes perfect sense. Not an NBA player. Jokic reminds me of Peyton Manning.
I've been thinking about Peyton Manning too, in a sense, but like I just say Tom Brady, but like Peyton Manning even makes
Tom Brady. I understand. The reason that Jokic reminds me of Peyton Manning specifically is because between the two of them, they weren't the most. I mean, I'm not saying that. No, you know what? I am saying this. Okay. Peyton Manning and Brady
were not the most athletic at all.
They're not the physical freaks. Exactly what I was going to say. They're not the most athletic. They're even to a point kind of, I would say Jokic obviously way more so than Peyton Manning, but to a point they're also kind of like, what's some word I'm looking for here? Dunked on a little bit about their athleticism. That's not the word I was looking for. I can't think of what I'm looking for. People basically like put them down because of the lack of athleticism is what I'm thinking. They knock him for it. Obviously, Peyton Manning less so because you don't need it as much to play the quarterback position, but kind of because like, he doesn't run. That was the whole thing. I'll never forget when it was the 2015, I think, AFC Championship game when both Peyton Manning and Tom Brady start to run for like the first times in their careers, and all the players on the sidelines just like, holy shit. Did he just do that? Anyway, but the reason that he reminds me of Peyton Manning is one, because of that whole thing. But even though they're not the most physically gifted physical specimen, and they are, even though they are still underratedly athletic,
they outsmart you.
They're outsmart you. They beat you with their brain. Exactly what I was going to say. They're some of the most cerebral players in their sport. Jokic is an absolute genius. He knows everything that's going on. He can read any situation throw at him. It doesn't matter what you do. He can figure out a way to beat it. And that's kind of what Peyton Manning did. And they just remind me, and it's kind of similar. It's funny that they both play for a Denver team. And that's like,
you're basically talking
just a comparison, but Jokic and Peyton Manning.
You're talking to the Tom Brady argument that I made, but you're just going more with the Peyton Manning side.
I just think Peyton Manning was more cerebral than Tom Brady. Obviously, Tom Brady, greatest of all time. Not even question.
No, for sure.
Unbelievably smart. I just think Peyton Manning was honestly even more. Peyton Manning's reputation, he was your offensive coordinator on the field.
Yeah. And this
anyway, the one thing I said that just is funny to me. You know what else makes this specifically that he is doing this against the Timberwolves even better? Obviously, we all know Nikola Jokic drafted 41st overall pick in the 2014 NBA draft, which was
what was that, Brandon?
Next month.
Yeah, it sounded like you said 41st brick.
41st pick. Did I say 41st brick? I don't know. 41st pick in the 2014 NBA draft, which almost 10 years ago. Next month. During a Taco Bell commercial. You know who had pick 40? The Minnesota Timberwolves.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Oh, it's so great.
But and you know what? Maybe it's time, because it's been a couple years. Maybe it's time we revisit this conversation, which is who are the top players on the Mount Rushmore of Denver sports right
Oh,
now?
Jokic is on there. All time, Jokic is on there. I asked my roommate this question earlier. Before we get into this, it's similar kind of vein. When it's all said and done, what athlete means more to the city of Denver or is more of the icon of the city of Denver? John Elway or Nikola Jokic?
I still say Elway because it's a Broncos.
The fact that I am hesitating on this question is insane.
I know. I'm still saying Elway now, but
I am too.
But the fact is that let me just be brutally honest here. Let's just hypothetically say the Nuggets do in fact go through with this, beat the Timberwolves.
They win the back-to-back. They both win the back-to-backs. That'd be
they win the back-to-back. For people actually were making the overall phrase that the finals that they won last year was, a Mickey Mouse title, right? That it just didn't matter. Like it was just something that, was something that, they played the Miami Heat. It was a
you can't play who's in front of you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But if they beat Minnesota, who a lot of people felt like actually was the favorites to win the NBA title, they beat
best
Minnesota.
Defensive team in the league, I think.
And I like how one of my coworkers today, Isaac Garcia, said this at work today. But like, it's a very different gentleman's sweep if they're able to pull it off. It's a little bit of a different gentleman's sweep for the Minnesota Timberwolves if they're able to pull it off.
You know what I saw it referred to as? The gangster sweep.
But so
not the gentleman's sweep. The gangster sweep. You go down 2-0. You go down 0-2 in the first two games, and storm back one for it. Go ahead.
But say that they finish it, they go to the finals, and they beat Boston. Like
here's the thing. Boston is good,
but
Boston, I think, we don't know how good they are because they play in the East, and the East is disgustingly horrible.
Right, but a lot of people wanted them to face Boston or face Milwaukee in the finals anyway. That never happened. But so they faced Boston. They beat Boston. And now we're starting to have a conversation of back-to-back champions, Nikola Jokic being a 3-time MVP, something that John Elway never even achieved.
He was a Kendrick Perkins away from being a 4-peat.
Like, there... After, like, say they do win this. So, like, hypothetically, say the Nuggets do pull this off. They win the NBA title and they go back to back. Look, Adam Mares was even joking this, maybe not even joking, but we could be talking about a dynasty with the Denver Nuggets. But I would not be surprised if you're also not necessarily talking about a dynasty. But the moment that you hit back to back, there's an argument to be made that the back-to-back and the season that Nikola Jokic has had, I know it's 82-game season, but it was more grueling, it was more physical, and it was harder to accomplish than John Elway's year when they won the Super Bowl and going back-to-back in the overall year that they had. So because of that, could very...
I don't disagree.
And because of that very well could tip the iceberg past John Elway and become the sole owner of the Mount Rushmore of Denver sports. And the reason why I firmly believe that is in the sense that the moment also that happens, and this is a big, big caveat, is that it also could create a ripple effect of Denver sports to where you also now will be talking about it becoming a Nuggets town, not a
I was
Broncos
literally
town.
about to say the same thing. Why can't the Rockies be good? God damn it.
They're
Anyway,
good. Actually, no, they're good.
They won 7 in a row, but they also lost like 30. Anyway, that's insane. But yeah, I mean, obviously Jokic on the Mount Rushmore of Denver sports is in.
He's cemented now, basically. But
it's in whatever, I don't know, adamantite, whatever the indestructible. Like it's
adamantium.
Honestly, build the statue already. Just. Already build a statue of Jokic. I don't even care.
Build Nikola Jokic a statue already. Have it outside a ball, and still have him play. And
I have to say this because I just need to put this in there in the stratosphere so that I can manifest this happening because it makes too much sense. I need them to change the name of Ball Arena. I know it's gonna make sense, and it's not gonna make sense, and you'll understand why in a minute. But I need them to change the name of Ball Arena to Ball is Life Arena. It's right there. You're right on the cusp. Just do it. I don't care that it's also used by a hockey team. I don't even care. Just do it. Anyway.
But yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun.
Jokic.
It's gonna be a fun thing to watch, and fun thing to watch with the Nuggets and the Avs were able to accomplish the feat tonight, where they stay alive. They stay alive. They beat the Dallas Stars. They live to fight another day. There will be a Game 6 in Denver to possibly take it to a Game 7. Which, by the way, if it goes to Game 7. The Nuggets and Avs will have a Game 7 on the exact same day.
That's insane. What if the Nuggets and the Avs both win the championship this year?
I mean,
I think you should all of the Kroenke employees are gonna get a year off, right?
Right. It'll be a national holiday, right? It'll be a holiday just for the Kroenke employees.
I'll just be waiting for my invitation to go see the Stanley Cup and the Larry O'Brien Trophy.
Well, I was gonna say, since you already saw the Larry O'Brien.
No. I need to see them at the same time.
I would actually be surprised though. Say they do. Woo! Oh, that would be crazy. So say the Avs and the Nuggets do win it this year. They blend the parades.
I want to stay on fucking parade.
One thing is for sure, though. One thing is for I was just gonna
that might demolish the city of Denver.
I mean, it was already jam packed for the Nuggets parade. But yeah, that would be crazy. Well, one thing is for sure: the Nuggets winning 3 straight. It's pretty clear that Jokic wants to stay on parade.
Yeah,
based on that mentality, he wants to stay on parade. And we'll see if they can do it. It was a fun show. It was so fun to get a chance to actually talk about the Denver Nuggets. We don't really talk about it a whole lot. Obviously, Brandon had the Joker picture in the background, but it's a fun thing to talk about.
In good conscience, change it after last night.
Yeah, right. Especially with the way that thing, and it's just been so many blowouts.
It's right in the peak of Broncos offseason. We gotta have some excitement here.
Right. And it is the possible excitement of maybe Denver sports in general.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys so much for hopping in. The schedule release happened. We'll probably see some stuff trickling in as far as maybe some more schedule release videos between Brandon and I. We'll talk about as far as maybe a favorite we didn't get a chance to necessarily talk about, or a schedule we didn't get a chance to talk about. I guess Miles released his own schedule video. Some people are actually saying it's better than the Broncos schedule release video.
Wait, what?
The mascot Miles.
Yeah, no, I gotta go find it. I'll go find it.
But, so we'll get to take a look at that. But anyway, we want to say we appreciate you. As we said at the top, make sure you hit the subscribe button to the MHRT Network. Make sure you follow both Brandon and I on social media. Brandon is on private, by the way, so you are going to have to request to follow him.
Dude, people still tag me thinking I'm the NBA player. That's the only reason I did that. I'm sick of it, and they still find a way to do it. I don't understand.
Been meaning, by the way, for everybody that is watching.
Thank you.
I want to congratulate Brandon on finishing, not winning the Rookie of the Year, but close within the Rookie of the Year. Personally, it feels like I think he should win it, with the fact that he's able to do Manely Broncos and, play an 82 game season. So I don't know if that's just us, over here at the MHRT Network and of course Manely Broncos, but we're a bit biased.
Yeah. I might have to turn the private off because they found a way to still do it. So it doesn't even matter, but I tried to,
you're getting
stop. I was sick of it.
You're getting,
although someone, go ahead.
I was gonna say you're getting the Brandon Marshall treatment.
Someone was nice enough to tag me in a video of my rookie card, which was cool. I don't understand how, because I'm on private, but they still did it. Whatever.
Hey Josh, if you're listening, can you please Photoshop Brandon on Brandon Miller?
Honestly, actually, that'd be funny. Please do it.
I mean, who knows if he even actually watches the stream anymore? We certainly don't see him in the stream anymore. Anyway, again, thank you so much for.
That Miles video is pretty funny. Go ahead.
Anyway, thank you so much for chiming in and watching the stream with us. Big Mike, Graham, Clayton, we love you. D-Rock, thank you so much for hopping in the stream with us. We love you guys. Follow again on Twitter at Manely Broncos, at Cameron Parker PO, Brandon Miller PO. It has been awesome. And with that schedule release, it means we are one step closer to Denver Broncos football. See you soon.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute,